So it's at a point now where I have to record each lesson separately from Monday to Thursday because you guys are actually slightly behind Mondays. So I have to kind of catch you up, and then hopefully I can get away with like recording one of the classes because I kind of hate having to post both because I tend to forget. Okay, let me make sure I've opened the correct documentation for the correct class. All right, you guys are JavaScript frameworks, the numero uno. One. Okay, so I've done a couple of posts here. So there's a new lab. So you can actually get to both of these either through the labs and projects folders, or you'll notice under week 5, you'll see 2 new pieces, lab 2 and project part 1. So let's talk about lab 2 first. Lab 2 is going to be the information you get from today will help you with lab 2. And I'm going to simplify this because a lot of you are going to like go into lab 2 and you're going to wind up doing way more work than you actually need to do. This is not project size. This is lab size, right? It's worth 2.5%. That's it. You're literally going to take the current Word, I'm going to call it WordPress because it's a blog, whatever. We're going to take our blog project, the WordPress project, you're going to duplicate it, and then you're going to turn it into either a CRUD system for books, a CRUD system for music, collectibles, movies, or sports teams. You're only going to have one resource, though. No nested resources, no associated resources, nothing like that. I mean, you can. If you want to do a nested resource and an associated resource, you're more than welcome to. But, I mean, do what you absolutely need to do, because I imagine your projects and labs are starting to ramp up, and, just get it done. That's basically it. So the idea is that you're going to build a simplistic CRUD system with a single set of views for that resource. And again, because you're duplicating it, you should already have the views, you should already have the routes. The only thing I'm going to tell you right now is I don't want to see a single trace of the word blog. So if you duplicate your blog, you need to go through and make sure you change all the names and everything else, which will force you to understand the architecture in the end anyways. So it's a benefit. It might feel like copying, but it's not going to be because it's not going to be that simple. So you're going to go through and modify it, and then you're going to modify what particular fields you're writing, which means you're going to have to go into your schema, your model schema, and actually modify those pieces. Okay. Obviously, we're going to investigate this today because we're going to complete create, read, update, and delete, hopefully in one class without too much dangling. Did we get any of it done? Did we get create done? I don't remember. I don't remember where we ended. All right, I'll have to see where we actually ended. But yeah, so that's lab 2. Lab 2 is in your groups, right? Unless you're working alone, that's totally fine. But lab 2 is in your groups. If you have a group, then you have to do lab 2 in your group. Fortunately, I can't do one or the other. So if you have a group, you're going to work with it in your group. All right, this is lab 2. Yeah.
Lab 2 is a group.
Lab 2 is a group, yeah. So it's worth 2.5% or 2%. Actually, I think it's worth 2% of the final grade. So like the big marks, right? Then the next one, this one's a little bit bigger. So this is our project part 1. And I'm sorry for just kind of like bulldozing through this super fast, but we have a lot to cover today, so I just kind of want to get it done and get it over with here. It's due Sunday, June 23rd, which is like a few weeks away. It's about almost 3 weeks away. This is the first part. So the first part is only the Node stuff that we've done. So only Node. So no React, no Angular, no Vue, no Ember, nothing like that. Unless you want to, try to do that. And I do award bonus marks when I see up to usually about 10% bonus mark on the projects if you step out of the box and do something different. So just keep that in mind. But basics, you're just basically creating the Node app. And you're going to very likely start with our blog as your starting point because that's probably a good point to start from because setting up the actual app file and stuff like that can be quite tricky. So I do recommend starting with the blog part, but what you're going to build is completely open to you. However, some suggestions are like a bookstore, a beer store, candy store, movies, music kind of thing. A chat application would also work, or a to-do application. The requirements are that you have to have those files in place like app.js. It can be called index.js, main.js, I don't care. But you have to have an entry file. You have to have routes, and I want them to be separated, not routes and controllers mangled together. I want routes and controllers to be separated in their own 2 little environments. You will need models. You will need more than one model. You'll have to have at least 2 resources. You'll need views. for whatever is applicable. Now, you need only really one set of views for a resource. If the other resource that you're using is a part of that first resource, you might only have one set of views. So you don't need to panic and be like, oh, I need views for this other resource. Only if it's applicable. You're creating views where they are applicable, where they make sense, right? Don't just create views for the sake of views. And then routes. You'll need routes to all of your controller actions, obviously. So your resource must have a route file in the routes, a controller file in the controllers, and a model file in the models. At least one of the resources must have a set of views, but I should be able to CRUD any of the resources you create. So any resource you create, I should be able to do a create, read, update, and delete in them. Even if it's an automated create, okay? It should still happen. Those CRUD operations should still happen with your resources. And obvious that's going to happen anyways because they're resources. Your application must have authentication, which we'll be covering next week. Straight, simple, easy authentication we're doing. Be very easy to drop it in. However, if you want to gain that like 10% bonus, then learn how to implement Passport. That would be a good way to get 10%. So you're going to wind up with authenticated CRUD operations. So reads are usually public if it makes sense for them to be public. However, create, delete, and update are generally protected methods, especially if it's a store, right? Because if you're adding in products, the last thing in the world you want is your consumers adding in their own products at their own prices, right? It would be bad store. But yeah, so those are going to have to be authenticated routes. You need an authenticated administration system. Your application must be hosted and source code must be accessible in an online repository. So your application stuff can be in a private repository. If you want to keep it private and you want to invite me to the repository, that's a-okay. However, it has to be in a repository online, and you must host it. It must be hosted either in Azure or Heroku would be nice, but if you don't want to host it in Heroku, I'm totally cool with that. Or even on your own private box. You guys get AWS stuff as well. You guys get like AWS as part of your every semester. You get like a credit. I think it's like $100. I think it's not cheap either. Anyways, that $100 on a basic EC2 box would keep you running for probably 5 years. Like on that $100, and you never exceed it if you ever actually spent any of it at all. You get credits? Oh, that's right too. And yeah, I think part of that student package, there is definitely an Amazon credit. Yeah, which is way more than enough money to do that. Like you guys could do AI stuff if you wanted to, which is the most expensive process there. Anyways, I don't recommend rolling your own box because it's a lot more sophisticated, but those of you that are doing Linux right now might want to, just to kind of get that experience, which is fine. No matter what, the idea is that I want a link. I want a link to an online version of your application. Work in the groups you defined. Hand in a working application. It's minus 10% if it's not working, and all I can do is review code, because the more I have to review code, the angrier I get. And if I have to run it locally, that's even more obnoxious. So all group members have to contribute, and if you have more than one person in your group, so if it's you and any other body, then you need to submit a README that defines what each group member did. Okay, so that I can easily see, okay, Lilit did the controller programming, and Mo did the models, that kind of thing, right? All right, you're going to hand in your work that is, so you cannot hand in work that is not your own. So go find a CodePen project and submit it to me. Don't do that, because that'll get you an immediate 0 plus a misconduct, and then we have that awkward conversation that I don't want to have. And then, or hand in a blogging project, hand in the blogging project. So the project we've been working on, packaging that up and handing that in as your submission will just be an immediate 0. So don't do that either. It must be, either original idea or one of the ideas that I suggested up here. Shouldn't be too bad. If you need help figuring out an idea, feel free to reach out to me through Slack or email, and I will happily help you figure out the best idea that you can approach. Have fun with this. Use this. Make it something that you want to put into your portfolio and show prospective hires, right? Definitely take advantage of this. I know somebody, is it in this class, you guys are building a startup from it? and maybe it's in the other class, they're actually building a startup project from it, and they're taking advantage of being able to do this to start their startup and have that time to do their startup piece. So I mean, like, take advantage of that. If that's what you want to do and actually build out a business idea, go for it. And if you need any advice, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help you. Okay, any questions about the project? No?
Not yet.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. If you have any questions, email or Slack.
And when was it due?
It is due the 23rd of June. That is subject to change. If I feel like people are just not hitting that point, then I might extend it a little further. Yeah, what's that?
Change it to the 25th.
Why the 25th? Why specifically the 25th?
23rd is my birthday. I don't think.
You don't want people handing in projects on your birthday?
I don't want to be stressing over, like, God forbid, some part of the assignment.
What time were you born at?
11.
11? I'm going to make it the 23rd at 11.
Wow.
The 20. Are you being serious? You want the 20? I'll extend it to the 25th if there's like a reason to that's other than your birthday. I mean, I wish you a happy birthday though, Mo. Nothing but love, brother.
Do you? Is this my birthday gift?
Yeah. Project just for you, Mo. All right, cool. So I think we're gonna have to get to the lesson plan now. Now, let's go ahead and open up our terminals. We didn't. Did we push code last week? I don't think we did push code. Okay, it doesn't matter. We're going to stay in the same branch. We're not going to create a new branch for this week because it's just a continuation of that same material on that branch. So let's make sure we navigate to our branches, wherever your branch might be. All right, so mine's in COMP-2068 Thursday. I'll expand this a bit. And I mean, we're going to start where we left off anyways. So if you don't have no daemon install, just run npm start so that we can start up our servers, just kind of see where we're at. Otherwise, type in no daemon. Because to be fully honest, I don't remember where we're at in this project. I know I'm positive that we had managed to be able to submit a blog post, but we weren't able to look at it or do anything with it yet. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we didn't do any of that yet. Also, open up your project in your IDE. So I'm just going to navigate to the project for Thursday and open it up in my IDE. I mean, a quick way for us to tell what we actually have complete is to see what we've got. So I think we did the routes, so I can tell that by going to, nope, we don't have the routes. So we're missing the routes part, so that at least tells me that we don't have anything connected. Oh, right, and so we were able to complete the blog.js, but it looks like we're missing a couple of pieces from it, and we have an unfilled blogs controller. Okay, so we didn't actually get to any of the actual CRUD pieces yet. Let's open up localhost 4000, but we did get the nav in. Cool, that's awesome. So I'm going to go to new blog. Cannot get new blog. That's a great place to start. All right, so I think what we'll do first is we'll actually create the routes first. And the routes, if you remember, they basically are what takes this address in the address bar and it translates that address to a controller action. Right? So it's going to take a look at the route and it's going to be like, okay, well, this guy wants blogs new. I'm going to point that to the blogs controller.new action. And that's how it kind of makes those two matches up. So we're going to create the routes first, and then we'll put in the actual controller actions. So if you jump into your editor, on the right or the left-hand side where you have your routes folder, you're going to create a new file in your routes folder called blogs.js. So you'll have a new route file. So again, that's under your routes folder. You're going to have a new file called blogs.js. Now you're like super short. And so like the cool thing about this is once you've created one route file, creating a new route file is very simple. You can even actually copy the contents from one route file to the new route file because they're basically the same contents. I mean, we'll type it out just so you have that full understanding of it. So the first thing is we need to require the router from Express. So we're going to do const router. Router is just a variable name. Require, which basically tells Node that we want to require an external library. Express. When you do it like this and there's like no path information, Node automatically assumes that you need your node modules, and it will immediately implicitly go look in the node modules for that node. If you had created a library called Express, you would have to do ./express. If it was in the root, you would have to actually fill a full relative path because it wouldn't be implicit. And then we're only going to grab the router, so we'll just do that. There. So const router equals require express dot router. And that's a function call. Here's somebody chatting, but I have no idea where they're chatting from. All right, next we want to actually include our blogs controller because that's how we're going to associate the route to the blogs controller action. And the way we do that is we just do const, right? Const is just a visibility modifier that basically says this is constant, it's immutable, and it's block scoped. Blogs controller. Make sure you do blogs with an S. Blogs. Blurgs. Blogs controller equals require. And because this library is not a node module, it's one that we created, it's /controllers/blogs controller with a lowercase b in snake case. So that's known as a relative path. What that basically means is start where we are currently, move up a directory, go to controllers, and then go to blogs controller. Yes? No, we're going to stick on this same branch currently, and then next week when we do authentication, we'll move into a new branch. Yeah. Is anybody unfamiliar with relative paths? Like, have you guys required libraries and you understand how to move through your file systems? Do they teach that? I don't know if they teach that. I always feel like that's like one of those things that it's kind of assumed when it shouldn't be. Like it should actually be explained. Yeah, Rich would be very strong about that, yeah, about actually using relative paths. So the difference between a relative path and an absolute path is a relative path, it assumes where you are, right? And it says, okay, I'm in this current folder, and now this path information tells me how to navigate, right? So 2 dots means move up a directory, 1 dot means I'm in that directory, the slash means this is the beginning to a directory, right? So in this scenario, we move up a directory, move into controllers, and then we access blogs controller, the file. That's what that basically says. An absolute path would be like https localhost:4000/ controllers blogs controller. That's an absolute path. So it literally starts at whatever the root of your application is, and it's the whole path to get to the final file. That's absolute pathing. And it depends on what you're doing to which one you would actually use. All right, so let's create the routes. So we're gonna let's export the route. I like to do that in that place. So I'm gonna move down a couple of lines. Module exports equals router. There we go. And then I'm gonna type in begin routes, end routes. Put some space in there, and then put my cursor in there. This is where we'll put our routes, our resource routes. So once again, the purpose of a route is to translate the URI, right, which is the URL that you see in your browser. It's to translate that path and basically say, okay, this user wants to do this thing, right? And we basically take that path and we use it to our benefit and able to translate it and send it to a specific controller action. And the controller actions, the reason why we're taking our routes and putting them in resource-specific files is because then we can be very specific that this is only routes that deal with blogs, right? So that everything's nicely encapsulated into one file. So we're going to do router dot, and then the dot signifies that the next piece is a method call. The method call that we're using is whether or not it's the HTTP method that we're going to use. So a lot of them will use get, and then if we're doing any mutation or mutability, then we'll be using post. So for this, it's get. And I think we'll actually just write all of the current routes we're going to create today anyway. So the first one is just the root path. And it's going to point to the blogs controller. The next argument is actually a function definition that it's looking for. So we put in blogs controller.index with no parentheses after it because that will just copy in the function definition. Actually, if you're going to get right technical, it's going to copy in the address location to the function definition. For those of you that are taking C++. We're also going to do new. So we have router.get, and it's just /new. And that will point to the blogs controller.new. And then we're going to have two that we're going to use as filters that we're going to create. We're going to create one called drafts and one called published. Actually, I'm going to leave those out just because of our time constraint. I'll leave those out and we'll cover them if we have time. Otherwise, we're going to do our show. So show is when we show only an individual blog post. So the idea is the /1 pointing to index will show all of the blog posts. The new will show us a form to create a new blog post. And then the show, which we're going to signify with this bound parameter called ID, will show us the individual specific blog post. And we're going to point that at show. So this is going to take us up to bound parameters. What a bound parameter, this :ID actually means something to Express. Express is like, oh, okay, cool, this is a bound parameter. What a bound parameter essentially signifies is that this is an argument the user can now pass in their URL. So the user could pass /gobbledygook, right? And then that's going to get passed as an argument to our blog controller.show, and we will have it as an actual argument that we can use to do a lookup with, right? So in this scenario, we're going to pass the blog ID in that position, and then we can dynamically list any number of blog IDs, and as long as you navigate to that path with a blog ID in it, it will actually show back a blog ID once we use the ID as a lookup. So ID, that's called bound parameter, and that's very common in model view controller systems. Actually, it's very common in any routing system. All right? And you don't have to call it ID. It's not like a specific thing. It's literally whatever. Treat it like a variable name. Just whatever variable name you want is completely fine. It's just ID is common when you're searching by ID. It's relevant, right? All right, and then the last four. We got four more. Router.get. Same as the above one, /ID /edit. And that's going to point to the blogs controller .edit method. Now, new and edit are always going to deliver a form, and because the form is basically the same form, we're going to utilize partials and actually deliver the same form. And we'll actually create this one this time together, just because it's, that we can have more exposure to Pug. The last three things we're going to do are mutation kind of things. Because they're mutable actions, we're going to do them using post, which means whenever we need to deliver any information to the controller for these three actions, we'll have to deliver them through a form, right? Because they have to actually arrive in a request body. And forms are how we actually push information in a request body. So the first one will be router.post, and it's going to point to / the same as the get one did. Blogs controller dot, and this one will be create. The reason why we can get away with doing that is because there are two pieces that the router looks at to signify a unique path. The first piece it looks at is the HTTP method that you're using. So if you're using get, that path is not the same as using post. Those are two separate operations. And then the second piece it looks at is the path syntax, right? So whatever you've used as an expression for your path becomes the next unique identifier. So as long as those two pieces together combined create a unique lookup, then that becomes unique. So we can actually do router.get/ and router.post/ and point them at two completely different blog controller actions because they are unique by the HTTP method. So the next one we're doing is router.post. And this one's going to point at :id. And this will be our update. So blogscontroller.update. And then the last one, because we don't have all of the HTTP methods available to us in Node just generically, we actually have to finesse this one a little bit, so it's not quite the same as it is in other model view controller systems. But this will be :id/delete. And that will be pointed at blogscontroller.destroy. And that's our 7 resource routes that you will have for every resource you create, for the most part. Unless for some reason you don't offer, like for example, we create these things called curls, and curls are like a short URL that points to a longer URL, and we never delete them. They are undeletable. And that's because once you've put it out on the internet, you shouldn't delete those things because those addresses now become available. So there are reasons why you wouldn't necessarily delete or perform another operation.
Which file did you make blogs.js?
It's under routes, under the folder routes, and it's blogs.js. If you want, I can post it into Slack if that would be easy.
No, it's like
Yeah? Okay.
Could you show your blogs controller file?
Yeah, I certainly can. Is anybody still typing just before I actually switch over to the blogs controller? No? Okay. So that's the blogs controller. Is that what you have currently, or do you have something different?
It's missing update and delete values.
It is. So we'll create those. So
Drafts and publish is different that we didn't use, I guess.
yeah, so drafts and publish we don't currently have routes for. So we'll leave those currently empty. In fact, I'm going to take the 2 of them. And is it Control-Shift to move them down? How do you move down? Does anybody know?
Control-Shift down.
Control-Shift down?
Fine.
Oh yeah, I see it's different in this. All right,
Um,
cut and paste also works. Boom, there's cut and paste. So I'm going to put them at the bottom. I'm just going to write a comment to fill in later. And we'll put our resource routes up here. So we have index, we have show, we have new, and we have create. So why don't we put edit up here just underneath new, just because it's, you know, it's relevant to it, right? So edit equals request res. And this is going in your blogs controller, your blurgs controller. And I mean, it's much easier to just duplicate, so much easier just to duplicate because it is literally the same structure for each one of these. I didn't do this on Monday, but I probably should have. This is generally the order that you will see controller actions in if you go to like a Rails app or a Laravel app or something like that. This is generally the like scaffold order that scaffolders will usually build in, just to give you a heads up. So usually they take their views, anything that's delivering a view, and they put it to the top, and anything that is delivering a mutation of any sort goes to the bottom, like a post action goes to the bottom. Cool. All right, did we create views last week? I don't remember. Let's look. Oh, we have the views sitting in the folder. I don't know if there's actually anything in them. I'll just give you a second. Is anybody still typing? Yes? Okay, I'll give you a second here to finish up. Anybody who's done, can you look in the views, blogs, and tell me if index.pug has logic in it?
yes.
It does? Okay. And what about show?
Yes.
And new?
Yeah.
Does new have a form?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we already have a lot of that logic in, which is awesome because then we'll fill this out, stub it out, finish it, get to the point where we can actually read. We'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll move that that form out into its own partial, and we'll finish off like this week's lesson, basically. And hopefully we'll get to Flash methods. If we don't, then I'll do a separated video for that and post it, and then just give you the code base. All right, good? Yes? Cool. All right. So the first thing we'll do is we'll update our index while we're in this folder. Actually, sorry, we have one more step. Under routes.js, not routes folder, but routes.js, which is in the root of our application. There's a routes.js file. We have to do 2 steps in order to register the blog's routes with our application. And the cool thing is it's literally duplicating the same 2 lines we use for pages. So you can even just do Command-Shift-D on those, or Control-Shift-D. And we're going to replace these words out. So this will be blogs routes, and that will be under blogs. And then the app use is going to change slightly. So it will point to the blogs routes. However, we can actually namespace our route group. And it's a good idea to namespace our route group. Because if we don't, what will happen is each one of those separated routes pages where we define the resource-specific routes will wind up overwriting the last one over and over and over again. But what we can do is we can type in blogs here. That will namespace that set of routes for us. And basically what will happen is the slash will now be /blog/. The new will be /blogs new, /blogs edit, /blogs show, /blogs create. So it basically namespaces all those routes, and they're easier for us to actually work with. The benefits of doing that as well is in order to create a new resource set of routes, you just duplicate the file and change this from blogs controller to whatever resource you're using, because all of these route pieces are the exact same for every single resource you create. So that's the kind of convenient piece to it. It's a little drier. I'll leave that up for a second. So that's in routes.js. Make sure you don't forget plural where plural needs to be used. That's usually the leading cause of most syntax issues. The only time we're ever actually using singular blog or blurg will be the model. Model will be the only time we ever refer to it singularly. Okay, cool. Anybody still typing? Ooh, awesome. If I jump and you are still trying, just say, hey, Sean, just a minute. All right, jump back over to the blogs controller. You'll remember last week, or maybe not, you won't. We created the model. We created a schema for our model that basically listed the fields that are inside our database table, right? So now with that, we had to require that into our controller so that we can actually write to it and read from it when we want to. Index, quite obviously, because we're going to actually display all of our blogs, needs to be able to read from the index controller. So the index is going to look a little interesting. Hold on. I need to find that thing. Okay. So we'll just write these out and I'll explain them as we go. First, we're going to access the model itself, which is called blog. So that accesses the model. So what happens is Mongoose, our thing that deals with our models, it's called an ODM, which is an object document mapper. What that basically means in the simplest of terms, it takes your database and turns it into an object. So now you can actually interact with your database just like you would any object. So you think about that for a second. Objects have properties and methods, right? A database has the database itself, then it has tables, right? Or in our sense, collections. And each one of those tables has fields, right? Or in our scenario, attributes. So what happens is when we access blog, it actually returns back that collection, so that table. And now if I want to access the title of that particular blog, I just do blog.title, and I'm accessing that field for that blog. Okay? Blog will usually reference, it always references the model. Now, the other cool thing about it is that it allows us to be able to do queries on it that are only specific to that collection. So instead of doing select star from blog like you would in a SQL table, we do blog.find. It already knows we want only the blog collection. We are only interacting with the actual blog collection. None of the other collections in the database are being affected. Okay? ODMs are probably while they're a little bit of a hand-holding tool, in a lot of cases, they're super powerful and they help you because they make your job a lot faster. Because you can code using ODM so much quicker than you can just writing out raw Mongo. However, it does support writing raw Mongo. Now, the unfortunate thing about Mongo and versus SQL is the queries are not the same. They are different. So where in SQL, if we want to select multiple records and return back an array, we use a .where, right? Or we use a where clause. Inside Mongo, we use find, and that still means the same thing. It means find everything that meets this condition. If we provide find with no argument, what it will actually return is every single record or document, every single document inside that collection, and we will get back all those documents. So once again, collections are equal to tables in SQL, and documents are equal to rows. Okay? So we'll get back every single document in our collection. When Mongoose has successfully or even not successfully done its action, it fulfills something called a promise. And we have two methods available to us to catch a promise. We can use a .then. .then on its own will catch a resolved and a rejected promise. So it doesn't matter what happens, as long as the promise is as long as the promise has been fulfilled, it will catch it, and then you can deal with it. But that's obviously problematic because it's going to either return an error or a success, and it's like, well, which is which? So the easier way around that is to use then and catch in tandem together, because what will happen is if the promise throws an error, instead of saying it to then, it will throw the error to catch. And catch will catch the error, and then you can deal with it like you would deal with any error. And that means then gets the leftover, which will be the success, the resolution, the good thing. So we're going to do both. We're going to do a .then and a .catch. And we're chaining these on. That's what those dots mean. We're chaining them on. So it's blog.find, .then, .catch. And it works like a lambda. Basically, every single return goes into the next function call. Then it returns, and that goes into the next function call. And it just keeps getting past each function call. .then and .catch take an argument themselves as well. They take a callback operation. And what this basically means is if blog resolves and sends its response to then will be like, cool, I'm going to take the response you just gave me, I'm going to pass it as an argument into this callback function, and the callback function will execute, because I'll execute the callback function. So while you can define these functions outside, it's actually very common just to use an anonymous function. And because we're using node and ES6 anyways, we'll use the arrow functions, because they're just nice and clean, they're easy to understand. So the way that's going to look is it's going to look like blogs, which is the response. So that's the argument we're going to use. That's the response coming back from from Mongoose. The hash rocket, which signifies we're using an arrow function. And then a block. We need to give it a block. That is the same as writing function, parentheses with the word blogs in it, and a block. It's identical. There's some lexical differences, but we'll just pretend they're identical for now. So once index has got back its stuff, it needs to actually deliver it to a view, because that's the controller's responsibility. The controller will interact with the model and interact with the view. The view never directly interacts with the model, and the model never directly interacts with the view. It's always passed through the controller. Okay? So what our controller will do is, now that it has these blogs, it needs some way to deliver them to our index view. So it has two things it's got to achieve here. It's got to render the view, and then it's somehow got to get this new blog variable into that view, right? So there's actually a very easy way to do this. First piece is res.render, which you'll remember when we did pages. The path to the actual view, which will be blogs index. That's the first piece. So what that will do is that will actually render our blogs index view for us. In order to get the blogs that I just worked so hard to get, well, I didn't do nothing, Mongoose did everything, but in order to get those blogs and actually give them to the view, we can pass the second argument to render called locals. And locals are passed in an object. That object is made up of properties and values. The properties will represent the variable names, and the values will be the value of those variables. So what we'll do is we'll do a comma and just put in an empty object. Just an object literal with properties and values. Sounds more complex than it is. I mean, there's a lot of magic under the hood in order to take all of those properties and now rip them into actual variables. So underneath here, all we're going to do is we're going to name our variables that we're going to have available to us in our index. So I think blogs makes sense, right? And obviously its value will be blogs, the blogs that we worked so hard to get. And then we're going to give it one more. We're going to call it title. And we're going to make it equal to the archive. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. My blog posts, doesn't really matter. I'm going to say archive. So if we get time tonight, we might implement flash messaging. Takes about a half hour to implement, but I doubt we will. So what we'll do for now, if we get an error, we'll console log it. The one downfall to this is the way Express works. Express comes through, it does all of the things that you're asking it to do, but it's looking for you to do something with the response. At some point, it's expecting you to do something with the response. What will happen on the front end for the user is if it hits the error point, because we're not going to give back a response, it will spin like it's like permanently loading. That's usually an indication to you guys who are going to be troubleshooting this to go look at your terminal. You likely have a console error. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to catch the error in a variable called ERR, or whatever you want to call it. Some people use E, some people they just write error out. We're going to hash rocket that fella into a body, and we're going to write console.error instead of console log, because you can. You actually have 4, error, warn, info, and log. And we're going to give it error. Oh, sorry, I meant to use backticks. Change your quotes to backticks. That way we can just use string interpolation. I heard a sigh out there. Oh, God, man. There we go. Now, we could even clean that up a little more. We don't really need the body because it's the only thing we're doing. We're returning it. So we could literally just error hash rocket console.error error message if you wanted to. Yes, Goggin. No questions. Just waving at me. Hi, Goggin. There we go. She's so needy. All right. We need to create, because right now we have no blogs. We have none, right? We've not made one yet. So this will work, though. We can actually go to our browsers, right? So go ahead and go to your browsers. Is anybody still typing this out? No? Okay. So we'll switch over to there. And we'll just go to /blogs, right? Now I have, because I'm using the same database I use on Mondays, I actually have stuff inside of it. So, but you should have an empty table, just title and status. If you have nothing and it's a blank page and it's spinning, where do we go check?
Console.
Exactly. We go to the console and we make sure that there's no big error here in our console. You have an error? Okay, no worries. Just give us a minute. Let's write a little bit more code and then I'll help you fix it. So like I said, I want to just get to the point where we can actually create one and then we're good. So why don't we hook up new? New is probably the simplest of the actions that we'll ever do, because new doesn't need to connect to the blog post at all, doesn't need to do anything with the model. All it needs to do is render the view. That's it. That's its only purpose, just render a view. So new is going to be also the smallest one we do. So just put your cursor in new, hit enter, and it's res.render, the name of the view, which will be blog/new, sorry, the location of the view. An empty object, because we'll give it a local, and the local we're going to give it is title. And we'll just say new blog post. One thing I do like about this classroom is I can keep my text kind of small, and it formats better to this projector so that you guys see nice big lettering, but I don't have to make my screen so super ridiculously big, which makes things a lot easier for me too. We can write create, but just to make sure, just jump over to your browser, and where are we going to go to see this? Yep, but which specific path? Exactly. Blogs/new. And that will take us to the actual blog form. And we already had the form available to us, so it should just be there. Like when you go there, it should just be there already. Unless you're having issues. So if I go to new blogs, that's what I get. Nice bootstrap, very bootstrap looking form. Now that form is not going to do anything for us. It's not going to work, right? Because it's not hooked up to an action yet. Like we have an well, it is hooked up to an action, but that action currently has no content, right? We're sitting here, we have create, and there's no actual content in create. We need to add some content. So the idea is that new will deliver the form to the user and say, hey, here's the form, right? Which is fine. When the user fills out the form and hits submit, it's actually going to take the request body, so the contents of the form, it's going to put them into the body, and then that body is going to be sent off to the action path. Our action path is going to point to /blogs. And because we're going to use the HTTP method post, that's going to point to our controller action create, right? So let's go ahead and fill this guy out. First thing we're going to need to do is access blog, the model. Now what's kind of cool is the operation that we're going to actually use is called create, which is awesome. So it's easy to remember. It's just create. So those of you that have had tests with me before know that it's always open book. So makes life nice and easy. All right, inside here, we need to give it an object. So this is the object that it's going to create. And it needs to abide by the schema that we created, right? So the fields in this object need to look the same as the schema fields. So we're going to do this in 2 steps. We're going to do it in the first step where we actually build out the object. And I show you how that's done. And then we're going to do it in the second step where we're going to reduce that down to a nice thin one-liner. All right? So the first argument is just an empty object. For those of you that don't know, that's called an object literal. And then I'm going to hit enter. Now we have 3 attributes, or fields, or columns, if you want to call them columns. We have 3 attributes inside our blog schema. Does anybody remember what those 3 attributes are? And where could you find out? Which one?
Log.js.
Which is located where?
In your model.
In your models, exactly. Your model is literally the blueprint of what your Mongo collection is going to look like. So, I believe the first one was title. Yeah, so we have title. Right, and it's going to be equal to a value, which I'm just going to currently leave empty. Second was content. Status was the last one. Now, objects require keys and values, right? And currently, this thing would break. This would be a massive syntax error because we don't actually have any values in these things. So where are we going to get our values from? Does anybody want to render a guess where we're going to actually grab our values from? That's true. Well, we're going to...
From the text fields.
Yeah, from the form. And which object? So we look at the 2 objects that we get passed, request and response. Which of those 2 objects will actually contain that data? How many people say request? And how many people say response? A few of you? Okay, so request. Response, the easiest way to remember that, request is what the user is giving us. At all times, it's always what the user is giving you. Response is what you're going to give back to the user. Okay, so it's in the request, and it's actually in a different location. So there's 2 different objects that attach to request. One's called params, and one is called body. Params when you look at a URL, don't write this. When you look at a URL, so here's my URL, right? Sometimes you'll see this, right? Anybody know what that's called?
Get parameters.
Close. It's called a query string. So these are called a query string, and these are a part of a URL, right? So they usually contain a parameter and a value. And what signifies they're a part of the query string is this question mark operator. If I wanted another one, it would have an ampersand with name equals Sean, okay? What Node does, Node actually lets us do this a little bit differently. It does it this way, where we get the bound parameters. They become part of the query string instead. All of those particular arguments, whether or not you've done it with a question mark or whether you've used a bound parameter, they get stored in request.params. Whatever the name of the thing is. So if I wanted the ID, it would be request.params.id, for example. With form bodies, it's different. Form bodies actually get transferred through the request body instead of through the request message. So the request body is under request.body, and if I wanted to access the title that you submitted, it would be title, like so. So that is a little tricky for people. The easiest way to remember it and the easiest way to make it make sense, like to force it to make sense, when you're interacting with post operations, it's always request.body and then they're in there. Don't put anything into bound parameters. Don't add query strings. Just keep that stuff out of there, right? If you're doing a post request, only the body. If you're doing a get request, only params. So only bound parameters, only query strings, and then that will help you keep those two things nice and separate. All right. I realize that it's going to take working with them to remember that, so let's do that now. So we're going to do request.body. And you would think it would be request.body.title, but unfortunately it isn't. If you look at the form, you will notice that each of our name attributes are nested. They're actually nested in a blog piece. So let me jump over to the form under new. You'll see what I mean. So this is our name attribute, right? It's no different. You guys, has anybody not done HTML in this class? Because it's going to make things really awkward. Okay, cool. Has anybody ever not built a form? Out of curiosity. Awesome. All right. So when you do forms, you can give it a title, but forms also support the ability to create subkeys. So you can create a main key, like blog, and then you can create a subkey called title. So I have blog, 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 but these are three separated things. It's title, content, and status. What that will do in Express, when Express sends this back through our request body, it's actually going to put them all under a new object called blog, which is really handy because when we start working with things like nested resources and stuff like that, you might have two resources listed in here, and this makes it very convenient to keep those separated. So this is quite a common practice, which means over here, we can't just do request body.title. We have to do request body dot, exactly, dot blog and then dot title. Yeah. And then again, request.body.content, sorry, .blog.content. And then request.body.blog.status. So like I said, blog.create expects an object of keys and values, and those keys are matching up to the schema of your model. That's the purpose. So if you add a key in there that is not in your schema, it will throw an error and tell you that this key is not in your schema. So it tries to enforce some conventions, and that's entirely a Mongoose thing. That is not a Mongo thing. Mongo doesn't care. You give Mongo whatever, Mongo will put it in and record it. It doesn't care. It's totally, yeah, okay, but whatever, you do you. But Mongoose expects you to abide by your schema that you defined, right? So title, content, and status are not made up. They are coming from our schema. So the next piece is create, just like find returns a promise. So again, we need to catch it, so we're going to catch it in .then and .catch. And once again, then deals with the success, and catch will deal with the fail. Right? So for .then, we're just going to put in an empty anonymous function. And in the body of it, we're not going to render. Does anybody know why it's bad, super bad practice to render from a post action? Rich might have covered this. If the user, so the browser's stateless. If the user sends their form post over to the post action, right, and you are now in the post action, you call render, what you're essentially doing is you're just completing the action and then rendering the view. You haven't moved, so you're still in the same state, which means if they hit refresh, they start at the top of that operation and they go through that whole process all over again, which means they'll create another blog post and re-render that action. And every time they spam refresh, which people do, like people are nuts, they'll just go, right? And they will render that thing like 150 times and have 150 duplicate form actions, right? So what we do instead, does anybody know what the best thing for us to do is? To do a next state? I think your return is close. Can't really return. Redirect. We redirect. So instead of rendering, which is where we actually take the view and show them, we redirect to a view, which causes a whole new request cycle to occur. That form body is gone, off in the ether, which incidentally, did you ever notice that Ethernet has ether in it? It's super existential. Anyways, off to the ether we go, and we get to our new page, but it's a brand new state. The form action is in there. We don't have to worry about them, right? It doesn't matter because they're in a brand new page. So we are going, and it's not hard. It's literally res.redirect, only instead of redirecting to a view, we redirect to one of our routes. Whatever route you want to redirect to. To me, it makes sense that when I create a blog, let's go to index. That way we can see it added to the list of blogs. So I'm going to go to blurg. Now, redirect does not support locals. That's an important thing to understand. So you can't redirect and then render variables there. It will not work. So because of the statelessness, right? Because there's statelessness, there's no way to get the variables back there. If you want to carry variables, that's when things like sessions or cookies come into play. And then for our catch, I mean, let's be super lazy programmers. Let's scroll up to the index, and we'll just copy the whole catch statement under index. Scroll back down to create. And, you know, happy accident. Let's just paste that right in place. Now, there's a method to my madness here. We have request.body.blog, and the only reason we have blog is because we namespaced our form names, right? And I did that for a very good reason. I did it because I want to be able to do request.body.blog and hand that as an argument to blog create and not have to decouple it into these three variable names because it's not necessary. It's already an object. Blog is already an object with those three properties in it. So what I can do is I can actually clean this up and reduce it by simply gutting that whole object that's in there and just passing request.body.blog as a single argument. Because that whole form contains everything I need in order to create a new blog post. So there's no reason for me to rip it out into one major structure. If you want to. If you feel like you like the verbosity of seeing the object, then leave it the way it is. If you like the condensedness of this, then condense it. I would say if you understand what is happening, condense it. If you're still having difficulty, then leave it expanded. or comment it out. That's another option. And then write in the new one.
So after that, like, you just put dot then dot catch, right?
Yep, dot then dot catch.
Catch is exactly the same as index, right?
Catch is what? Yeah, it's the same thing we wrote for index. Yeah, I just copied and pasted it. Yeah. All right, so if everything is working, right? I know. If everything is working for everybody but Lalit, and then we can create a new blog post, okay? We'll do that, and then we'll take a 15-minute break, and I'll go around and troubleshoot and help people with their broken stuff, okay? So jump over to your browser. Just do a refresh, right? Double check your terminal, make sure there's no errors in your terminal. Give it a title. I'm going to call it The Wisdoms of Mo. And then I'm going to write, hey, Mo, what do ya know? Come on, Amadeus. Oh, that's a name. Amadeus. What ya... It's hard to spell. What you gonna play us? There. And I can either make it a draft or a publish, but right now we don't have edit, so it's gonna be stuck that way. Do whatever I choose. Once I'm done, I click submit. Ta-da! It worked. Everything's good. And I don't have any errors, which is also very good. But what I was talking about before, if you click, remember how I said you have to do something with the response. If there's nothing done with the response, it will literally just spin for eternity. If you go to your visual code under here, you'll notice that our show has no action, right? We haven't actually given it a body, so we're not doing anything with the response. That's a good point, because if you click on these links that are supposed to go to that action, it just spins for eternity, because we're not doing anything. It's not broken. It's in the controller. There's nothing for it to do. It's stuck. All right, cool. Let's take 15 minutes, and I will help those who are having issues. Lalit is first. Okay, so obviously we've done create and we've done read. We're missing one read action, which is show, right? We don't have the ability to show a singular blog post yet because it's empty. So why don't we add that now, because it's actually not that big of a deal. So make sure you're under the blogs controller. And we're going to go to the show action, which is currently empty. And the way show works is show is going to take that bound parameter from the URL, the ID, and it's going to use that to look it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to access our model, right? Because obviously that's where we're going to find the blog post. And then we're going to use a very good helper method. We could use find and then pass it a query string, which is an object of the attribute and the value we want to find by. Or we can simply just use find by ID, because that's how we're looking this up in the first place. So we'll just use find by ID, which is a function call. Now, like I was saying, with get requests, any identifier we will shove under the params, right? So if it's a query string, it goes under params. If it's a bound parameter, it goes under params. If it's form data, it goes under body, which is kind of confusing. I like the way Rails does it, where it's all under the same thing, or Laravel, which does it under the same thing, but for some reason Node splits them. So we're going to do request dot params, and because the bound parameter is called ID, we're going to do dot ID. If you called it Bob, you're going to do dot Bob. You're going to catch on pretty quick that Mongoose always returns a promise. So dot then dot catch. There is another way around it, but I don't want to introduce any more complexity, because you can actually just do this with awaits, async and await. Then in catch, take an argument, right? You know what? Why don't we just copy the catch from above for now? Because it just makes life so much simpler, and we'll just paste it in place. Catch is done. Then we'll receive a response from blog, which will be the blog post that we're looking for. It will get a singular blog. It won't get multiples. You don't have to worry about that. You will get one. So what I like to do, if I'm getting back an array, even if it's an array of one item, I call the argument plural. So I'll do blogs or users or whatever it is. If I'm getting back a singular piece, like a singular document, and I always know it's singular and it's guaranteed, then I will use singular form. So because I'm getting back unos blog, one blog, I'm going to call it blog. And again, it's just a variable. It's just a catch. It's just to catch the response. And I'm going to use hash rocket block arrow function. Just out of curiosity, just ballparking, how many people actually like the arrow function structure, the syntax for arrow functions? Yeah, I do too. I'm a big fan of the arrow function syntax. All right, now we just need to give a response, right? So res, which is our response object, and show, right? Now show is a get request, right? It's a view. Are we going to do a render or are we going to do a redirect? How many people say render? How many people say redirect? Okay, so we're going to do a render, and the reason is because we're not taking form data. We don't have to worry about multiple refreshes. We can actually just completely render directly from this view, which is super nice. Redirect is specifically if we have blog information and we want to like basically clear our whole state and move to another location. That's when we redirect. So res.render will allow us to actually render the view. It takes two arguments. The first argument is where the view is located, which is under blogs show. And then the second argument will be the locals that we want to send into the view, which is an object. The properties, the key values that we're going to use, blog, obviously, which we'll put our blog variable in. Bye, Gagan. Alrighty. And then title. And we can be super personable here with our title. We can make our title actually the blog's title because we already have the blog. It's available to us. And to access the title, we just have to do blog.title. That title is going to autofill the H1 on that page for us, so we might as well utilize that, take advantage of that, and give a really nice, good user experience and do blog.title. So what that will do then is now the blog title will become the title on the page, which is awesome. That's very good, right? That's a good user experience. Go ahead and save that. I'll scroll up a little bit for those of you to catch up. For the rest of you, you should be able to go to your index page, click on your blog link, and you should see a view of your blog. That should all work now.
How can we add non-modules? How can we install the non-modules? So use the command to install the non-module. Install npm.
The non-what?
Non-modules.
NPM. Yeah.
So you click on
Oh, for installing? Yeah. NPM I to install. Yeah. What are you installing? What is Node Blues?
We want to initialize the NPM space.
Are you saying node modules? I gave you the node modules, I think, so you don't really need to, but either way, it's npm install. Npm install with no other things in it will install the current package JSON, which you can do. It's totally fine. Even if you have no modules, it'll just install over them.
Oh no, I haven't copied those because it was going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, it would. It's actually better just to leave them. So yeah, just run node npm install and then it's done. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mo.
So when you click on these, it should open it, right?
When you click on it, it should open it. But I don't currently have my server running. Give me 1 second. because I was in the wrong folder. Yes, that's exactly what you want. Hold on. Did you write a body for your story?
I did.
Okay, so it should say the body. If it doesn't, then it's likely the body didn't write for you. So your content, you may want to check the word content, make sure you didn't spell it wrong somewhere. Otherwise, it should show the body. So when you click on it, it should show your status for that particular blog, whether it's published or draft, and then it should show you the message that you wrote in the content field. So, no, that's got some finesse and charisma behind it. Yeah. So I work with this guy named Ilya, and I say niche, but he says niche. And so I said niches get stitches. All right, so now we've got show. We are done. Create and read is done. Good. Yay. Now we just need edit and update and delete. Those old fools. So the cool thing is edit is a view, right? And the nice thing about edit is extremely similar to show. They're almost identical, actually, because of the way it works. However, the method we're going to call for it is going to be called update one, which is really easy to work with. So we'll write edit first, just because it's quick and easy to write. All right. Oh, yeah, we're going to move the form as well. Let's do that next, because that's going to take a bit more time. So let's do edit. So scroll to wherever edit is. It's further down somewhere. Here it is. I found it. Line 35 for me. I don't know where edit is for you. So the first thing we want to do is find the blog. It's literally the same as show. Yeah, you know what? Do yourselves a favor. Copy show. Copy the contents of show and paste them into edit because they are identical. The only difference is what we're rendering. So I just want to see how well we can do this. I only need to change one line. What line?
38.
Oh, Mo is on the ball. What am I changing, Mo?
Show to update.
Not update.
Update one.
No, edit. Yes, to edit. Nice. That's it. It's literally identical to show. It's just the viewer rendering is the only piece of logic that's different in that scenario.
Wouldn't that be the?
So here's what's happening. So when we have new, we have an empty form, right? It's a fully empty form, and we're going to add our content in it. But with edit, yeah, we can deliver an empty form if we want to be complete dicks. We can deliver an empty form and be like, dude, you better remember your blog post because you're going to have to write it out entirely from scratch. That's not a good approach. That's a terrible user experience. That's the worst user experience ever. Nobody will use your blog platform. So we need to be able to repopulate the form. But we're programmers and we're super lazy and we want to be dry. We don't want to have to maintain two forms that essentially do the same thing. We want to maintain one form, right? So the easiest way to do that is to take the form, extract it into its own partial, and then if there's a blog present, populate it. If there isn't, leave it empty, right? And so new and edit can both use the same form. And we're using the blog to trigger whether or not it's filled or populated or not. All right? So that's what we're going to do. So in order to do those steps, and this is like the first view that we're actually going to create together, we're going to create a new view under blogs, and we're going to call it form.pug. And we're not going to extend anything. We're not going to add any other things in there because it's going to be a partial, so it's just a template. So under views, blogs, you're going to create a new file called form.pug. Now the nice thing is most of this has already been written because we wrote it in new. So we can literally just go to new, grab the form, rip it out, and paste it into form.pug, and then it will be available to us to use. So I'll give you 1 second. Is anybody still creating that file just before I actually move into new? No? Okay, I'm going to take you at face value. I'm going to go to new.pug, And you'll notice from line 8 to 24 is a form. Cut it. Control exit, command exit, whatever your flavor of distro or operating system you're using. Command X, jump over to form, paste it in.
Also, we don't actually need it in the new form. New.
Nope, because we're going to use the same form in both new and edit.
So we took it out of the first location.
Yeah, we're taking it off of new and we're dumping it into form.pug. So this is going to blow up the pug templating engine. Does anybody know why it will blow up the pug templating engine? So pug relies on a very simple but kind of annoying concept. It relies on tabs, and it relies on a uniform measurement of tabs. You can use a 4-space tab. You can use a 26-space tab if you really want to torture yourself. That's totally up to you, but you have to be consistent. So if you use 2 spaces, it has to be 2 spaces throughout the document. Every single tab character from that point on has to be 2 spaces. If you use 4, same thing. It requires that. Like that's the way it kind of, because it uses that to tell if something is nested. Right now, I've got a problem. I have my form, which is nice, left aligned. But now I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 spaces between my left column and the start of that form. And then its nested content is only 2 spaces over, which means that whole thing is just going to break. So what you need to do is highlight the pieces that are the children of form, and using Shift Tab, back those up so they're only the right measurement from the side, which should be 2 spaces. Shift Tab. So Tab will go right, Shift Tab will go left. So that's cool, so that we have this in place, but the thing is now new no longer has a form because we haven't actually taken our partial and included it in new yet. We need to include our partial into new. So that's really easy. It's a simple one-liner, not a lot of work. Jump over to new.pug. Underneath the div and as a child, so make sure you've tabbed in, you're going to do includes /form.pug. Actually, maybe it's include and not includes. It's include. Sorry, not includes. So include.form.pug. And what that will do is when the templating engine creates the page, the HTML page, it's actually going to go find that file, copy its contents, and paste them into there.
When I log in and I go to new blog, it shows /form.pug.
Oh, did you write includes or include? Yeah. That was my mistake at first, because I did includes.
Okay,
Yeah. So now when you save, if you jump over to your actual blog application and you click on new, you should see the form. Okay? But now you have to understand that that form is now dynamically coming from your includes. Yes?
For some reason it pushed the status options.
Yeah.
Okay. Aha. So, like I was just saying, if the tabbing is not correct, it will treat it differently. So if your options are like that, they are no longer children. They are now parents. They have graduated to parental status. They are no longer children. They need to be tabbed so they are nested into select. So that's cool. So we have form. We know it's working. It's outside of new. It's now its own little beast. We need edit, right? And we need to make sure edit actually populates the form. So we're going to need a new view under blogs. So under blogs, views, blogs, create a new file and call it edit.pug, and hit enter. And then I have some awesome news for you. Jump over to new, Command A, Command C, or Control A, Control C. Control A copies or highlights everything. Control C will copy. Jump over to edit.pug, paste that stuff in, and we're going to change the H1 new blog to edit blog post instead of new blog post. We could get a little bit more personal there if we wanted to, because we have the title variable available to us, the title local. So we could actually do H1 equals title, and then the title that we actually set in our controller would appear there instead. Good? No? Yes? Maybe? How are we doing there? Good? Okay. All right, so now that's awesome. If you actually, we don't have an edit button. We have no way to navigate to this particular thing. We can kind of cheat a little bit, right? Like if we jump into here, go to blogs, click on a blog, and then just append /edit to the end of it, that'll take us to the edit page. But I mean, that's a terrible way. Could you imagine giving that to a user and being like, yeah, this is how you edit this thing? Yeah, that's terrible. So what we'll do is under blogs, we'll actually add some actions to the right-hand side here so that we can edit and delete, okay? So if you jump back into your IDE, I know we're kind of bouncing around all over the place a bit. I apologize for that. Let's open up index.pug. And in index.pug, we're actually going to create an action. So the first thing we want to do is add a new th, which will create a new column for us in our table. So there we go. We have a new column in our table. What's that? If you want to, yeah, if you want to call it actions, you can. Just hit space and then call it actions. It's totally up to you. I've been putting empty columns, but the form? Are you typing it out? Okay. Because I told you to copy and paste it. Is it good? Are you good? Good enough? All right. Where were we? Index. There we go. So yeah, so we're going to do this. And then down in the TDs, down here where we actually have our row values, we're going to add a new row down there. And it's going to be TD. TD stands for table del. What is it? Data? Oh, okay. Table data. It's the cell. It's the individual cell. And then hit enter and hit tab so it nests it. And in there we're going to put a link to our edit page. So it's A. A is the tag name, right? So that's an anchor tag. To add attributes, we do a couple of parentheses, so almost like we're calling a function. And in there, we type in the name of the attribute, so href. And then its value, so we say equals, and the path is a string, so it's /blogs. Sorry, not backticks. Use backticks, not unless you want to use concatenation. Blogs / the blog.id /edit. And then because this is just the anchor, it's not actually the name, it's not the label, we need to add edit at the end of it so that the label's there. Maybe in a couple of weeks we'll put font awesome in and make it look a little prettier with font awesome, so we have a pencil instead of the edit word. The edit button is sick. Nice.
So it pops up, and it pops out and gives you that moment of crown.
Gratification that you achieved. Yeah. Success.
Yes.
The one thing I will say about model view controller systems is once they are working and you get the basic idea of how it starts to work, building them becomes super fast. Like building resources, adding new things into it becomes so fast. It's not even funny. Yeah, you're banging out an application in like a weekend because it's so fast for prototyping. Yeah. And then you're not stuck with just a prototype. You can go back and actually refine it and make it better and add design, and then you can build out a full application. But it's so fast to get something out to a stakeholder. Yeah. All right, cool. Anybody still typing that out? No? Let's go take a look at our edit button. Edit. We have an action. We're going to add another action there too. We're going to add delete there eventually, but delete's a bit different. It's a bit of a different beast. So now if I click edit on the Wisdoms of Mo, I get to here, but of course it's not populated yet, and it's not populated yet because we have to modify our form to tell it to populate. What's that?
I think I know how.
You think you know how?
Yeah.
Share with class.
You share it with the class.
I think like at the form you put like the model name and the title.
Nope. Unfortunately, there's no magic like that. You do get magic in some form languages, or in some languages, like Ruby, for example. Rails will automatically treat the form as both a edit and a new, and it just magically populates it. Don't know how, but it does, and it works. No, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take advantage of the value field. So there's a value attribute that you can add to an input and actually populate it with content. And we'll populate it with the content we already currently have, right? So in order to do that, though, we have a few pieces to go into place. One thing we need to note, edit, when it goes to update, it needs to tell update what it's updating. It needs to tell it the specific blog post that it's updating, so it's not just, firing the update against every single document in our database, because that would be terribly destructive. So we need to pass the ID. We don't need to tell the user the ID because that's not a field the user should be filling out. They don't really know what the value would be. Plus, it has no application to the new form. The new form doesn't care about the ID because that's what it's doing. It's creating a brand new record, so it's a brand new ID. So what we'll do is we'll use a bit of conditional logic. Yeah, conditional logic that's built into Pug. So we're going to say if blog. Because if we have a blog record, then we must be editing, right? And then we're going to hit enter and tab in. And we're going to create an input, a hidden input that stores the ID that we can pass on to the form. So we're going to say input type equals hidden, name equals, and you may be wanting to do this, blog ID, but that would be not a good idea. And the reason is because when you go to update it, it already knows it's updating that particular record. This is not going to allow you to overwrite the current ID, which will cause it to blow up. So what we do instead, we just call it ID, just plain ID. If we have more than one resource on the page, we'll deal with that. Next, we want to give the method, sorry, no, we don't. We want to give the value, right? And the value is equal to, and because it doesn't need to be a string, this interpolates JavaScript inline. We just type in blog.id. So that's the object and the property. So that will create a hidden input on the page if blog exists. If blog doesn't exist, we don't have to worry about it being there. The next step is that each one of these can be pre-populated again if the blog exists. And there's a syntax structure that is available in literally every programming language I know that is very handy for inline conditional statements. Starts with a T. Exactly. We're going to use a ternary in order to say, hey, if we have a blog, split this content out. If there's no blog, make it null, right? So it's going to look like this. Value equals, and then I like to put the ternary in a set of parentheses. And it's going to be, ternaries work by asking a question, essentially. So blog, that's where the question mark comes in. Blog. If there's blog, then blog.title, right? Otherwise, which is signified by the colon, null. I'll collapse my sidebar so it's all on one line. Nope. No, not quite. So, no, slow down. The cool thing about this is you get to learn 3 ways to populate these fields because all 3 are different. So text area doesn't actually have a value attribute. Instead, if you want to pre-populate text areas, you actually nest the content inside of it, and then that populates the text area. So it's different than a regular input field. Kind of annoying, but that's just how it works. Text area is also one of the only, I know, one of the few input elements in a form that actually has an opening and closing tag. So text area, select, and option. And I think that's it. Yeah. Otherwise, input has no closing tag. So there's like no consistency in HTML, unfortunately. But all right, so because of that, what we do here is we actually put our logic nested underneath. And it's literally the same thing. You're not wrong. It is the same thing. It's just nested. Blog, then blog.content. Otherwise, null. Now, are you super hardcore programmers that are like, yeah, we can make that even smaller, right? Those of you that don't understand this operation, just leave it as the ternary. Those who totally get this, you can write it like this. Blog and blog.content, and it will do the same thing. And the reason that works is because blog, is it there? Is it identifiable? Is it not false? As long as it's any of those things, that side automatically is true. And then blog.content will evaluate to true, so it returns blog.content immediately. That's a great way to use logical operators. So yeah, if you want to be hardcore, do that. All right, next thing. Select is even more of a pain in the butt. Probably the biggest pain in the butt. Because you're trying to pre-select a value that the user has selected. So it's like, you got to make sure you get it. So the easiest way to do that is by iterating and performing the same piece of logic on each one as you go. So we're actually going to take the 2 options that you guys just finished nesting back underneath select and say goodbye. We're going to delete them. And then we're going to use a pug iterator. And I love this thing. It's so normal. It's each. Each is such a wonderful word. This whole thing reads like almost perfect English, actually. It's each status, which is a made-up word for me. I made it up. I mean, it's logical, it makes sense, but I made it up. It's just a made-up variable. In this array, so that's what that says. Each made-up variable name in this array, so draft and published. We're going to create option. We're going to say the value is equal to whatever status returns. That's the first piece. And then we're going to say selected is equal to and oh yeah, I'm sorry, but we're doing this the hardcore way. Blog and blog.status, because I'm not doing a ternary that returns true and false, because that's just ridiculous. That's absurdity. If that is selected, right, either way we're going to spit out the label, but the label I don't want to be draft, published, in like loud yelling letters, so we're just going to do status dot to lowercase to make them lowercase. So what's going to happen is it's going to publish our title, it's going to put our content into the form, it's going to hit the status select box, it's going to iterate over these 2 statuses, and it's going to compare them. It's going to say, hey, does blog and blog status available? That's not correct. Oh, sorry, I'm missing one argument here. It's actually blog.status equals status. That's what we needed. So I'm saying if the blog is present, right? So we need the blog to be present before we even do this check. If it's present, then I want to take a look at the blog status. If its status is equal to either draft or published, at that time, and that's what was currently selected, then I will select it. Otherwise, I'm going to set selected to false, which is the equivalence to not selected. And we'll see how this works in a minute. All right, anybody still typing? No? All right, let's jump over to Chrome or whatever browser you're using. If you hit refresh, it should publish. It should populate, sorry. And you should see your form in there. So I'm just going to show you how this actually works because this says draft, so it doesn't really tell you whether or not what I was saying was true. Let's jump over to the new blog. I'm just going to ASDF. I mean, the quickest way to test the form, right? Hit submit. There it says it's published. When I click edit, status should say published if our logic is working. And it does, so our logic is working. Yes! You would think I planned this ahead. Anyways. All right. We have edit. We have form. We have form partials. Now we need to do update so that we can actually, when we click submit on the form, it actually goes and does the actual update. And we have 30 minutes to do it, which is more than enough time. So under exports.update under your blogs controller, give it some space. So for update, we have a command called update1, and update1 actually takes 3 arguments. One of them is optional. The first argument is the blog post or the resource collection, or sorry, not collection, document that you want to edit. So whatever query you're using to find that post. Okay, so it's your clause, it's your where clause. The next argument is what you want to change, and it's an object, right? So if you have different changes in your blog posts, right, when you go to post those in, it will take those, and all it will do is take a look at the key and the value and reassign, basically nuke and pave those values. The third argument, which is optional, basically tells Mongoose how to handle this particular query we're about to do. Like, do you want to run it once? Is it a transaction? What are you doing with this thing? And that's important to us because update 1 will not validate automatically. And you may not remember, but in our schema, we told it that titles are mandatory, that there must be a title. The way update 1 works out of the box, the user could create a blog post with a dummy title, edit it, remove the dummy title, and then save the record with an empty title. And we don't want to allow that to happen. So we're going to take advantage of the fact that we can actually tell Mongoose to handle this query with validations by passing it the parameter run validations. So in order to do this, we start with the model. Always. We always start with the model on these things. So blog. The name of the method is called update1. Oops, update1, like so. It will guarantee to return a promise, and we'll be able to catch the error. I'm going to do this in steps so that it's easy to see because this one gets quite lengthy. So like I said, update 1, its first argument that it takes is the where clause. It's an object of keys and values for it to do a search for, and it will find a record and return it. Now, I mean, it's in the name, so it might seem obvious, but update 1 will only return 1 record, and it will only update 1 record, which is great because you don't want to accidentally update a whole whack of records if you've made a mistake, right? It's better to kind of have to retype out 1 than retype out hundreds. So the first argument it takes is an empty object that we're going to give it, which will contain our query. And I'm going to hit enter to push it apart. We're going to search by the field name, the attribute name, and this is going to seem a little weird because it feels instinctual to type ID colon. But unfortunately, the way Mongo stores ID is not ID just like that. It's actually underscore ID, which is a little annoying, but that's how it does it. And then we're doing request.body, .id. So remember the hidden field we created? That's where that's coming from. Go ahead and put your cursor on the closing bracket for the object, the curly brace there. Add a comma. The next piece is what we want to change. And you can either write this out like we did up in create. You can literally copy that object and paste it in there. Or you can use the nice shorthand because everything is still namespaced to request.body.blog. So those are our form inputs, right? So the data inside that form input is now in that request.body.blog, and that's what we're passing as our changes that we want to make. And like I said, last but not least, I want it to run my validators, so that way if the user tries some sneakiness and leaves the title blank, they can't save it. It will actually tell them that they have to modify it. The way I do that, I do comma for my third argument. It's an object as well, because you can have more than one setting. And then I add the parameter run validators, and I make it true. So then is probably the largest one of the queries that you'll have to write. Or sorry, update 1 is. And incidentally, this is one of like 5 ways to update a record in Mongoose. You can also just simply pull the record back, change the properties, and then do blog.save. And that will also do the same thing. Sometimes people prefer that. I like update 1. I think it's clearer. And you know exactly what it's doing, right? Just like create, you know exactly what it's doing because it tells you what it's doing. All right, so in the then, we give the then an empty anonymous function. And are we rendering or redirecting? Why do you say that? An update is what kind of method? It's a post method, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Redirecting. And why are we redirecting?
Because after the update, you don't have to, like, if user refreshes it, we'll try to update it, and then
Exactly.
after updating it, return back to the index page.
Right. So let's always remember, create, update, and delete equals, unless we redirect, right? Always post, redirect, get, render. Oh, that's easy. It flows right. Get, render, post, redirect. There you go. All right, cool. So we're going to res.redirect to a path, and we'll just go back to blogs. I mean, we could return back to that specific blog if you wanted to. I mean, that's totally doable. All right, let's take a vote. Who wants to go back to index? Who wants to go back to that specific blog so they can see their update? All right. I mean, 5 people voted, but that's fine. The winners win. So let's change those to backticks then. We'll go to blogs /$, and we can't do blog.id. We have to do request.body.id. So we're going to reuse it essentially. And that'll redirect us back to the show. And catch, I mean, we've already been lazy up to this point, so let's just copy and paste catch, and it's done. So that essentially, if you're just running basic resource controller, that's about the worst it gets. Like, they don't get much more difficult than that. Flash messaging will add a bit more logic in there, but most of your controller actions will be no longer than 20 lines tops. Alrighty. So we need to test it. I just want to know that everybody's actually got that in. Yep. Awesome. Jump over here. Refresh. Make sure our page still loads. It's all good. I've got ASDF. 2. ASDF. Yep. Change publish to draft. Hit submit. And it takes me back to blogs, which is not what I wanted it to do. So it didn't quite redirect, but I think my logic was still on the wrong logic. That's why. So I'll edit this and see if it fixes it. Published. Submit. Now, you see it's going to the wrong location when I do the update. Oh,
It's duplicating it.
right, it is. Does anybody know why? I'll take you to the page that's the problem. We have a problem in here.
The form action doesn't
Dude, you're spot on. The form action is pointing to create for us. We need to make sure that it acknowledges that it's an existing blog, so if the blog exists, it updates, not create. So instead of /blogs, it should actually be going to slash the name of the blog and edit, right? That's where we should be going. So there's a couple of pieces that we need to do. Let's jump over to our blogs.js, which is in our routes. And I made this mistake the other day and I fixed it, and I meant to tell you guys about it, but I totally forgot. So just take ID out of there so that it's not a bound parameter and change that to update. So it should be router.postUpdate goes to blogs controller update, and router.postDelete goes to blogs controller destroy. So just change those two. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm of the new mind, kind of changed my mind. I don't want my parameters and body in the same controller action. I want either just the body, if I'm doing post actions, or just the parameters. Feels cleaner. Feels a lot cleaner. All right? So that's routes, blogs.js, and we're changing post update and post delete. Okay? Cool? Yep, good? All right. Under the blogs controller now, or sorry, not the blogs controller, under the form.pug, we're going to change this action, and we need to change the action by using a ternary again. And the way we're going to do that is we're just going to take the current string that's in there and instead pass in a set of parentheses. And we're going to do blog as a question. If there's a blog, we're going to use /blogs/update. Otherwise, we're going to use /blogs. /blogs update will update whatever it is, and /blogs will create whatever it is. The cleaner way to do this, the much cleaner way to do this, would be to use the locals, right? So when we render edit, if the edit is in there, we could put the action into the locals and then just use an action variable. That would be much cleaner if you ask me, but this still works. And any of you that are done, go ahead and try to run your update on one of your blog posts and it should work. And it should also hopefully redirect where it needs to redirect to, which is the show. All right, we good? Good. All right, jump back over to Google Chrome. Can't wait till we get delete. I'm going to edit this ASDF2. Set it to draft. Hit submit. Yes, it worked. We're on our show page. You can see my changes. Now if I go to blogs, you can see that it's updated it and I don't have a new 6th post. So let's see where we're at. We have create, we have read, and we have update. The last piece of the puzzle is delete, and surprisingly enough, it's probably the most annoying one. And the reason why it's annoying is me. I'm the annoying part to it. I believe that any manipulation with a record needs to be done through post. I am strong and adamant and passionate about that. Get is purely for reading. That is all it is meant to do. Yet people hate writing forms around a delete action because deletes never have a view and they're always just a button. That's just the way they work. So when you write it the way that I do it, it means creating a form and then using some CSS funnery in order to convert that form into what looks like a link. So it's kind of some trickery. But I am telling you, Rails does it. They just obscure it from you. Laravel does it. They obscure it from you. Every good framework does it. They all do post. They do it properly. And so we're going to do it properly. So this will be the most annoying one. But at the end result, hopefully you get a good understanding of why we do it that way. Keep your things nice and pure. Try to maintain convention. It's a good idea. All right. Where do we want to start? We can start with the index page because it's the part that's the biggest pain in the butt. Yeah, let's do the index page. So jump over to index. We're going to create our new button under our actions. First, we're going to create a pipe character, and because pub treats the pipe character as an actual operator, we have to put it in a string, which is bizarre. So we're going to do equals, quote characters, space, pipe, space. Like that. That creates a pipe character. So what will happen is we'll have edit, pipe, delete. Next, like I said, because our form action is mutating data, we are going to build a post. We're going to build a form post. So we're going to have form. We're going to give it a class of .destroy. So that way we have a CSS class that we can target. And then it takes a set of parentheses for us to put in the actual attributes. The first attribute we're going to use is the action. So action equals, and we need some dirty backticks. And it's slash blogs slash, no, we don't need dirty backticks actually. Sorry, I'm wrong about that. It's quote characters, and it's slash blog slash destroy. And then we have a method, and the method will be equal to post. We are going to have two inputs. One will be hidden, which will contain the ID of the post we want to delete. And the other one will be our button that we're going to wind up editing, which will be just a submit button. So we're going to do input. The first one will have a type of hidden. A name equal to ID. And a value equal to the blog.id. Next, we need the button. You could just do a button. That would be totally fine, but I'm going to do the input version of it. So it's input, type equals submit, value equals, we could do delete, or you can do destroy, or whatever you want. Terminate. Terminate. Always works too. How many, just out of curiosity, how many in this class took my JavaScript class, like the intro to JavaScript? Okay, so a good chunk of you. Do you remember when we talked about prompt and alert and confirm, and I told you they're basically useless functions. Nobody uses them except for one particular time. Does anybody remember what that time is? It's this time. Yeah. It's this time because when a person clicks delete, computers are stupid. Right? They're just like, yeah, okay, you want to delete it? Let's go through and delete it. Oh, I didn't mean to click that button. Damn it. Now I just lost my whole blog post. So usually what we want to do is stop that from happening and give them the chance to cancel, right? So what we can do is we can create an onSubmit action that will actually allow them to cancel it out. And the way we do that is after method, do comma, and then type in onSubmit equals. And unfortunately, this has to be written in quotes because it's a JavaScript action. I wish I could just type it out because I figure Pug would just know. It's return. Confirm is the name of the method. And in confirm, are you absolutely dootly sure you want to delete this life's, whoops, can't do life because I use single. I have to escape it. It's all right. Life's work. Masterpiece. Masterpiece is better. Masterpiece. With lots of question marks. There. Make sure you escape that apostrophe S because it will close out your single quote if you're using single quotes. So this will stop them from deleting something accidentally. There's still industry people that are completely against this even. That they would rather you use like a JavaScript modal instead of using the alert boxes, the dialog boxes. All right, good? Yes? Still writing? Okay. You popped up like a gopher. Give me a thumbs up when you're good, Gavin. You're good? Oh. For the rest of you, if you want to test your button, go for it. Jump over, but you're going to notice some real awfulness. You're good? If you go over here and you hit refresh, we've got our delete button, but it's pretty gross. Yeah, that's pretty awful looking. So the nice thing is, I'm going to show you how to make it look like the other button. So remember assets that we did last week? If you scroll up, I wish the open editors thing would stay closed. Go to assets, style sheets, and styles.css. So here's our styles. And we're going to do two changes. The first change I'm going to do at the bottom is to take care of the fact that none of you noticed that the title of the page was being hidden underneath the menu. So we're going to bring that title back out. So let's do .container, margin top, 60 pixels, which anybody who's used Bootstrap almost knows that number verbatim. So that will bring our title out. So now it won't be hidden underneath the menu anymore. The next piece we want to do is target our form and modify it. So we're going to do .destroy. And the first thing we're going to do is tell it to display inline. That will make it stop breaking to the next line, and it will come up beside, and it'll be inline. Next, we want to target the input button, and we want to change it so it looks like a link. So we're going to do .destroy. We're going to target input, but we want only the submit button. We don't want to touch the hidden button, not that it would do anything anyways, but we want to be specific. So we're going to say type equals submit. There's our wonderful selector. Step one, reset the whole form. So if there's anything on there like padding, margin, anything like that, we're going to wipe it off. So we're going to say margin 0, padding 0. Gets rid of any possible pieces like that that are on it. Next, the background. None. No background. Links don't have backgrounds unless you put them in there. Border 0. No borders. And then we're going to set the color. And now this is Bootstrap's color, and I noticed this the other day. I've never realized this before, but this is cool. Wait for this. This is awesome. So it's color. We may have very different, varying degrees of what we think is awesome, but this is awesome. Hashtag 007 best friend forever. It's an easy one to remember. James Bond is my best friend forever. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but there's two sides to the coin. When you hover over a link, you get an underline. I realize it's just a text decoration and completely pointless, but I want my delete button to look exactly like my edit button. So I'm going to do .destroy, :hover, right arrow, input, type equals submit. That's my selector. My rule is text decoration underline, so that it underlines it. And then color, and I didn't write down the color. It does change. It goes slightly darker. Do you want to grab it for me? Because I know you know exactly where it is. So when you grab the hover color, you actually have to trigger hover in order to get the color from the inspector.
5, 6B3.
6B3. There we go. 005 6B3, which is not nearly as friendly as James Bond's best friend forever. And once you're done that, flip over to your browser, refresh, and you should see a very nice edit button. Anybody still typing? No? All right, let's go take a look, see what we get. Now you may have to hit Control-Shift-R because your browser may have cached your CSS. So if you do Control-Shift-R, it's a hard refresh. If you're on Mac, it's Command-Shift-R, that's a hard refresh. If everything is good, you should now see Archive, which is the title of the page. And you should see that these delete buttons look exactly like these edit buttons, right? However, they do not function because we need to actually add the destroy operation. The good news is that was the complex part. The controller action is actually super simple. It's not that difficult at all. So let's jump over to the controller. So blogscontroller.js. Come down to where it says destroy. And I want to do this on the model, so what's my first word? Blog. Blurg. Blog dot, and if we have an update one, we also have a delete one. There we go. And the interesting thing is the arguments, well, it actually only takes one argument, but that first argument is the exact same first argument as you have in your update one. So it's an object, underscore ID, and we're passing request.bodyID. Models always return what? A resolved, fulfilled promise, right? So we need .then and .catch. .then, we'll just give it an empty callback. And are we redirecting or rendering? Redirecting. Res.redirect. And we'll go back to blogs because you can't return back to that blog because it no longer exists. It is now gone. It's disappeared into the nethers. And then I'm just going to copy the catch from above and paste it. And save. So like I said, I knew we'd run out of time. I'll post a video adding the Flash messaging system in, which I was going to do anyways because on Monday we did it in like 20 minutes almost, and it was a little too fast for people. So I'll do the Flash messaging system in the video, and I'll post it, and then I'll also post the finished code. So you can copy and replace your code and stuff like that. All right. Are we good?
Can you go back to your form for a second?
My form.
Sorry, the index. They destroyed form.
This one?
No, that I don't think will work.
What won't?
You're missing back escaping it twice. Try destroy.
I got an error.
Well, this is escaped.
Try it.
Alrighty. Ooh, it's going to the wrong location. That's not good, but I know why it's going to the wrong location. Wrong location, not long location. Actually, I don't know why it's going to the wrong location. Method post. I did not take time and read the error. Cannot post blogs destroy. Well, if I can't post to blogs destroy, it's very likely that my route is damaged. So if we go take a look at routes blogs.js, yep, because I said delete. I didn't say destroy. So let's change it from delete to destroy. That's where that error is. There's another issue as well. My onSubmit did not work, which might be because Daniel is correct. But I have an easy way to fix that. I'm going to switch single quotes to double quotes.
That was the backside.
Is it? Why does it have to be 2 backslashes? I've never seen that. Oh, really? Oh, that is super annoying. Yeah, that's cool. All right, jump back to Google Chrome. Go backwards. This actually probably deleted. No, it didn't. Okay, cool. Let's go fix that first. So underneath the index.pug, I'm just going to change these out to the single, are you absolutely sure? Oh, I can't. Oh, okay. Beside the return, change that quote character to a singular character. And at the very end of the line, change that to a single character. Make sure you get rid of the second one. And then return confirm, the thing inside needs to be double quoted. And I will stop there for a second and give you a minute to read through that. Like, I mean, it should highlight change for you, so it should be pretty easy.
Something totally different. Mine says, Mr. T says, are you sure you want to leave this fool?
See, that would be, you remember my insult generator? Yeah. Get it to, like, do the random insult generation, so every time somebody hits delete, it gives them a random insult every single time. That would be awesome. I might do that. I might do that. All right. Are we good? Yeah?
What are you doing?
We changed we changed from double quotes to single quotes. And then we double quoted the comment line in here.
Can I know what?
Because of Pug's escaping issue. So what's happening is we need to escape the apostrophe S, and we weren't doing that. We couldn't escape it. Actually, it's still an issue. Okay, I'm changing this to very simple. I'm just doing, are you sure? It's fine. It's totally fine. There. Are you sure? Right? Done. Don't got to escape nothing.
You need a quote at the beginning of it, though.
I need a quote character at the beginning of it. Yes, you are completely correct. There we go.
In my experience, when someone says it's fine, it's probably not fine.
Yeah, that's how my wife says it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine. It's totally fine. All right, let's refresh. I mean, we didn't really do anything, but all right. We're going to click delete. It popped up. Are you sure? Okay, it disappeared. Let's try this one. ASDF2. If I hit cancel, it shouldn't go away. There you go. Potato salad. Let's delete this one. Delete. And delete. So that looks like complete CRUD. We have, it does. That works on so many levels. We have create, we have read, we have update, and we have delete. That's the 4 operations we need. And that's awesome because next week we're going to whip through create, read, and update and delete on users so that we have authors now, right? We're going to kind of cheat. Usually in a system like this, you would have roles. An author would not be the same as a user because a user has a different level of capability. But what we're going to do is we're going to treat authors as just generic users. They'll all have passwords, and then they'll be able to register and sign up and all that type of stuff, and then actually be able to create a blog post under themselves. Yeah. This is it?
I need help.
Yeah. The only thing I need to know, is there any classes in here after us?